Aloha. I'm delighted today to be your guest host for Dr. Stefan Malchek, who has written a book called Crazy Tales of Combat Psychiatry. And we're going to be talking about his book today. And Stefan, I'm really delighted to be here with you and to be talking about your book because it's really opened my eyes a lot. But I'd like to first of all start with maybe your background of just who you are and kind of how you got to be where you are right now.
Wow, thanks, Joan. I'm delighted to be here too. Born in St. Louis, grew up in St. Louis, and I went into service in 1966 and spent 68 and 69 in Vietnam. That's the sort of the genesis of this book came out of that experience. I was a social work clinical psychology specialist. In essence, I did therapy with guys, combat soldiers, and also did evaluations for people who were being administratively processed out of the service.
Mm-hmm.
So came out of the service and lived in San Francisco for almost 25 years and worked in psych units and crisis clinics. And finally in 1990, I went back to school and got my BA in 92, got my master's in 98, and I got my PhD in 2006.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, how did the war affect you and kind of what you ended up doing?
Oh. Wow. That's a really huge question.
Yeah.
In every arena, it of course had an effect on me, and it still has an effect on me in lingering ways. Part of why I wrote the book was it's both been a teaching and sort of an expurgation for me to be able to reframe, this is classic, CBT, to reframe my experience. And I find that I'm richer and deeper and more healed as a result of writing about it, talking about it, because it was crazy. A lot of really wild stuff happened. A lot of beautiful stuff happened that most people, you never hear about. The stereotypical drug-crazed Vietnam vet, mother-raping, child-killing vet is really, really overrated. And, but there were very few people who had my particular experience. And part of the book was to express my experience, but also to express my perspective, because it really taught me a lot about human beings and life and war and civilization in general. So, and so it continues to affect me because it changed my viewpoint. It woke me up. It woke me up.
Let's maybe talk more about that. How did it wake you up, and what did you, how did you personally change from that?
Well, there's a line in the book where, when I first stepped off the plane in Tan Son Nhut Air Base, and within 5 minutes, and I say in the book, I don't know how I knew, but I knew. Within 5 minutes of putting boots on the ground, I knew that all of the rhetoric about the war and the domino theory and et cetera, it was all bullshit. I knew it was all a lie. And because you could see people having completely different lives than what was being portrayed in the media. And, I think perhaps I even am guilty of overrating how much drug usage there was, but there was tremendous amount of drug usage. And personally, I probably encountered 3/4 of the people I encountered every day were loaded, and so that had a huge effect on things. But I just knew that it was a lie, that everything, and it was like it was almost a classic. The word is peripateo. When the protagonist of a dramatic piece realizes that everything he or she ever believed in was a lie.
Yeah.
I had a peripateo standing there in Tan Son Nhut Air Base, and I just had this realization. And almost a feeling that from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same. It started right there, that instant, almost within 5 minutes of being on the ground.
Yeah.
And it just got more intense, it just got more intense the longer I was there, and the more I saw, and a lot of things that, well, there's things in the book people, I mean, I'm sure you're going to go, no, that couldn't have happened, but, I would say probably 99% of what I write about actually happened. I either saw it or heard about it or, experienced it personally.
Yeah. Well, you did have a unique perspective because you were actually listening to guys who had been in the field and who had been experiencing, like, the kind of the horrors of combat.
The
and
real
also
war.
The real war,
Yeah.
And that had to really also affect you.
Oh, whew. And thank you. And that took a lot of years for me to unwind that.
Yeah.
Because for a long time, I didn't really feel like a real vet, a real Vietnam vet. Because I wasn't in an infantry company. I wasn't, et cetera, et cetera. I wasn't. But at the same time, I experienced a lot of, rocket and mortar attacks. Got shot at in helicopters. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But I dismissed my experience as not being essential enough or brutal enough, perhaps. And
Wow.
and yet, I have very, very dear friends who, like 3 tour vets. I have a couple of friends who are black ops people, and they have, and my friend Harold in particular has always said to me, "What do you mean you're not a combat vet? You sat there and listened to guys like me dumping their stuff. How could you not be a combat vet?"
Oh, yeah, no.
But for me personally, it took a long time before I could really own that.
Well, I know just from the book that I've read, and that you really did experience incoming, real explosives and stuff happening all around you.
Sure.
And that affects you too when you're literally in the middle of this war and there's bombs exploding all around you.
Well, it's how they break the post-traumatic stress is broken into actual and vicarious, and so I have both. From direct experience and then from the witnessing, because they say a witness of violence is a victim of violence.
Yes.
So witnessing other people's traumas and horrors and had an effect of traumatizing me too.
I want to say though, this book has, and because I'm not one that can really either see or read a lot about violence, and yet this book has absolutely claimed me. I want to say,
good.
I'm fascinated.
I'm so
I can't
glad.
stop reading it because it also has this wonderful underbelly of humor.
Oh God!
And just like just kind of astounding things that happened.
Yes.
That was like, really? And so it's waking me up. It's giving me a whole different perspective of really what happened there.
Good.
And that's one of the things I'm really appreciating, because I never would experience it directly, but being able to experience it through your eyes is just fascinating.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. It was because there was a lot of humor.
Yeah.
It was just it was kind of like ER humor, like the blackest of black humor, because that's the only way sometimes you could survive.
I got it.
Or laugh about things.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I really get that. Could you tell maybe the audience a little bit more about your book and kind of what not just why you wrote it, but what you want them to receive out of it? Because there's a lot I'm receiving, so I'm wondering from your perspective.
Can you give me a little bit about what you're receiving?
Well, what I'm receiving is this whole understanding of really what Vietnam really was. It's kind of like behind the scenes. I'm getting a peek behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And of the real people who were in the war and what you experienced. But I'm getting it from a particular bird's eye view of all of the people, not only your experience, but your personal experience, but all of the people that you came into contact with.
Oh my God, thousands.
Whew, so that
thousands. Yeah, and the other part is that I've been home 46 years, so I have a whole lot more perspective now.
Yeah.
Even though not as much now here on Maui, but I still have nightmares. I still have memories, and part of the perspective of having that distance from the actual experiences that, well, as you're finding, and there's a lot of history in the book. History of the places I was, history of political movements, history of military, history of war, history of Vietnam. Vietnam was kept by, it was in a part of the Imperial Chinese Empire for almost 1,000 years, you know. And then, then came the Japanese, and then the French, and then the Americans. I mean, so they, in their eyes, they were an occupied country for over a millennia. Wow. So and that in part helps explain things, at least to me. It would be kind of like if somebody came here, from, let's say, Mars or something, and came over and took over Maui. Why were you so willing to die? Well, it's the Aina, it's the land. This is my heart. You're trying to take away my heart. You're trying to own my, no, you're not going to do that. And so one of the things I wanted to show is I have a lot of respect for, in spite of everything that happened, you have to have a huge respect for the VC and the NVA. They were incredibly, they were incredible. They had incredible tacticians. They were incredibly dedicated. And of course, this is written from an American soldier's viewpoint, so it is somewhat prejudiced and slanted. But at the same time, I want people to know the behind-the-scenes stuff, the history, and the political motivation, and not just the action. Everybody focuses on the action, but that was maybe 10%.
That actually is one of the things I really am loving about it. Is I am getting that behind the scenes and what really was going on back then with the people who you were fighting. As well as the people who were doing the fighting.
Well, and with the people who were fighting me. And from within the service.
Right, exactly. And also that whole thing of who were the real people, and then who were the ones that were trying to, in the midst of the war, make you shine your boots and keep you, it just was crazy.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy. That was one of the biggest points of contention was, what, I should shine my boots and my belt buckle and I'm in a combat zone? What are you talking about? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But that was part of the mandate of lifer servicemen was that we have to maintain military discipline. Doesn't matter where you are. And I'm like, it was ridiculous sometimes. It was really ridiculous sometimes.
How do you feel that your experiences there have helped you in helping people now in your
Wow.
Yeah, with people who haven't necessarily been to war.
No,
I realize that everybody has a little PTSD if they live in the society in a certain sense.
1967, one of the first psychiatrists I worked with, his name was Noel Volberding, he said in one of our seminars, we had these weekly seminars, and he said, actually, personally, I think almost everyone is a little psychotic. And it took me like 20 years to figure out, and one day I went, oh my God, he was so right, part of what happens when you're in a combat zone, everything gets amplified.
Yes.
Everything is just amped, 20, 150,000, 100 times bigger, better, stronger, wider. And in the earlier years, people say to me sometimes, oh, you were 68, 69. Wow, it was pretty wide open. But then I know guys that were there in, 61, 62, 64. And man, it was the thing that's... And it's the reason why people come home from the war and everybody expects them to be normal or adapt. And when you've lived with the lid off, with no rules, no law, on many levels. Yeah. And the further in the field you were, the less law there was. The more it was like complete field expediency. You did what it took to stay alive. That was it, bottom line. And once you live like that, you're never going to come back and put a straitjacket back on.
Wow.
I think that most people live with a straitjacket on, and that's one of the biggest pieces. I came home and I said, "That's it. I'm done. I'm done. I'm exempt. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to. I'm not going to live by somebody else's rules. I don't want to do this anymore. I will not do this anymore.
That's beautiful, and I'm imagining that you take that also into your clients to help them really be more authentic. Because when you say that, it's like what it speaks to me is like, what do we need to do to really be authentic? Not to be in this place of like pretending, to be a certain way, but really to be authentically who we are.
Yes, perfect, beautiful. Thank you. That's exactly, and that I really, and increasingly, I mean, I've made a lot of progress through the years, and I think that I'm a brilliant therapist now because I've learned a great deal from my clients too. But I really apply that because, I don't pull any punches with my clients.
Yeah.
I used to work with about half my caseload was 100% service-connected VA vets, and the other half was like people at OR techs and ERs, people from the ER, EMTs, first responders. That was probably the other half of my caseload, and so I was always dealing with these people who had had extreme experiences. Yeah. And arguing with the bureaucracy on the other hand. Yes, they do have PTSD, And with the bureaucracy always saying, oh, no, all they just got to give them some meds and put them back to work. I'm like, no, it ain't going to happen. Yeah. And you're right, because what I bring to the table, as it were, I mean, I'm not brutal, but I don't pull punches with people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been known to just, tell clients that I think they're full of bullshit. What?
Yeah. And probably that's exactly what needs to happen at that time, because if you're sensing that they're really coming from a personality rather than from their authentic self,
right?
To be able to say, hey, listen, I don't think that what you're really saying really is your authentic self.
Yes.
So however you say it, to let them kind of like wake up maybe and feel at a deeper level of what really is authentic for them.
Right. Like, for example, you're 47 years old. What is with this good little girl stuff? Who says you have to be a good little girl? You're 47 years old, you've got 3 kids. What? And you still act like your mother's looking over your shoulder. I'm very sensitive to that kind of multi-generational influence. And you see it a lot with vets. It's actually, if I would at some point, if I could really fund it or get funding, I would really love to do a study, because I've known a lot of Iraq and Afghani vets whose fathers were Vietnam vets.
Wow.
Yeah. And then a lot of Vietnam vets whose fathers were World War II vets. So you see this multi-generational progression. And in some sense, and I'm not saying that PTSD runs in families, but when you see this multi-generational influence of warriors, and you see, generation after generation of people having PTSD, going to, into service and putting themselves in harm's way, and then anyway, that's something I would at some point. I guess is one of my little fantasy things. I'd really love to do a study of multi-generational PTSD. Do
you work now with people who either are in the service or have PTSD? It's like, is your population base now? And also, who do you enjoy working with? Who do you feel you really can help?
Well, let's see. I guess I'm officially retired. I have a little part-time job working at, but I don't really have a caseload anymore, although I have done some consultation and some pro bono work, and very occasionally, somebody comes along and needs a little short-term work. But I always have a special place for vets. Always will, and
because you understand them,
I
understand them better than any person like me that hasn't been there. Could possibly.
It's and there's a certain level on which. I don't know exactly how to do this. Okay, so there's a certain level in which I can work well with women, not being a woman, but I can still, as a human being, but there are certain limits. Like I can't say, gee, I know exactly what it's like to be a woman, for example, right?
Exactly.
So with vets, it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Even if I haven't had the exact experience, I'll have had some experience that at least touches on their experience.
Yes.
even if somebody who spent their whole tour drinking beer and driving a truck, you know, yeah, okay, I can understand that. You know, I knew truck drivers in Vietnam. You know, I rode in a lot of trucks. Blah, blah, exactly. You know, so there's a level in which long time ago I used to work at a Vietnam veterans rights agency in San Francisco, and I was the go-to guy. So we would take people in, and if they said they were a vet, we'd start giving them services. But then we started losing a lot of money because we were giving services to people who were not vets. So they'd call me and say, "Hey, Stefan, come downstairs." And I'd come down and I say, "Okay, this guy says he's a vet." I said, "Oh yeah, really? Okay." So I would say, you know, I got 3 questions for you. Where were you? You know, when were you there? And what was your job?
Yeah, there we go.
You know, 3 questions, and within 5 minutes, you know.
You'd be able to know.
It was a litmus test. Yeah, exactly. It was a litmus test. Well, no, I think this guy's a vet. No, he's jiving.
Got it.
Because invariably, people will fall on stereotypes and et cetera to support a lie.
Well, I know Crazy Tales of Combat Psychiatry was your first book.
First novel.
First novel. And since then, you've written other books.
Yeah.
And so I'd love for you to maybe talk a little bit about those.
And
what did that lead to?
Crazy Tales is actually a new title. It was for many years called Brotherhood, and I first wrote it in 1979. And I've written 23 versions between 79 and now.
Got it.
So it was actually my first novel, and my book Crucible of Shame, you know, A Journey to Wholeness, grew out of sort of leftover material or excess material from my doctoral dissertation, which I wrote about, you know, dissociation in recovering addicts. I did case studies with recovering addicts. Different kinds of addicts, sex addict, cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, but all of whom were 10 years or more clean. So, and I kept gathering all this material and had all this research material, and my committee kept saying, no, you can't put that in there. And I was like, I kept complaining, no, it's important. No, you're not writing a magnum opus here, you know. So I had to save all this material, and by the time I got my dissertation done, I had like 400 pages of material. And so between about 2008 and early this year, I've been sifting through and, you know, winnowing it down and rewriting it down. So that became Crucible of Shame.
And tell maybe a little bit about because I know that hasn't come out yet, but it will be coming out within 6 months or so.
Yes.
Yes, so tell us maybe a little bit about that.
Okay.
Just a tad. A thimbleful.
My contention is that we live in what I call a traumatogenic and addictionogenic society. Traumatogenic meaning a society that promotes and creates trauma. Addictionogenic meaning a society that promotes and creates addictions. And on some level, it's done as business. Yeah. Because the psychopharmaceutical industry, the recovery industry, the prison industry, et cetera. I mean, everybody's making money off of having people be, you know, addicts and et cetera, and being traumatized. Yeah. And that there's a shame, a sense of shame shame being essentially that we teach. Really, starting with children, we get taught that we're not worthy, we're not valuable. We have to impress somebody, we have to do something for daddy, we have to become somebody, we have to be somebody important. It's not okay to be who you are, you know, which then creates this whole sense of the false self. Now Winnicott called it the false self, that we put up which translates from the Greek persona. We put up a mask, we wear a mask for other people to see, trying to be who we would like to be versus who we are.
Yeah. We try to be or who our mothers or fathers wanted us to be, or who our teachers wanted us to be, or who society wants us to be.
Or daddy or the Pope, or exactly.
So, you know, and that comes back to that whole thing of really one of your fortes is really to get beyond that mask and to support people and really seeing and feeling more deeply into really who they really are, into their hearts, into really their authentic self.
And my thrust with therapy is I want people to come out, you know. I want people to get unzipped.
Yes.
You know, I want people to step out and be real.
Yes.
I mean, it's ridiculous, especially now, especially today. I mean, the world is in crisis.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that we're all responsible. for using our gifts in the best possible way and sharing them and helping everyone to become more happier, more joyous, more free, And I think that it's the responsibility of everybody, not just therapists and healers, although, to some extent, we take more of the burden, but that's okay.
Yeah, and everybody any person, at least for myself, any person that does step into their authentic self, and really says, hey, I'm going to live life, I'm going to live life fully and authentically.
It's so beautiful, too.
It's so much more fun.
And it is. It is. It really is.
And then we can really connect.
Yeah. Well, and that's very good. That's the piece. That's the piece right there, is that connect.
Yeah.
Because when you're not being real, it's kind of like, I saw this a drawing. There was these two people, a man and a woman, talking to each other, and they were both holding up masks in front of their faces.
Yes.
And their masks were talking to each other.
Yeah, there we go.
And so how can you have any authentic connection when you're not real, when you're not honest?
Well, this is so beautiful, and you are really an authentic, honest person, and I love talking with you, Stefan. It's always a pleasure. So
me too. It's fun.
I have
it's
a
always
feeling
fun
that it's
talking to
just
you.
about that time that we're going to be having to start. But thank you so much for this time of revealing really who you are, and also your past and all of the experiences that you had. You're a fascine person, and I'm sure there's going to be more time where
make it easy.
more interviews to come.
Oh, I hope so. That would be fun. As far as I'm concerned, you're welcome anytime.
Thank you so much. Well, I've enjoyed this chat, and thank you so much to the listening audience for being with us, and blessings to you all, and aloha.